Hi, it's Ramsey Dewey with the JX Fight Club in Shanghai, China. Let's talk about the recent fight between Priscilla Cachoeira and Valentina Shevchenko. It was a very controversial fight, specifically because the referee did not stop it soon enough. Priscilla landed 3 strikes in that fight. Valentina landed over 200. It was a very one-sided beating. If you didn't see the fight, spoiler alert, Valentina Shevchenko got a quick takedown, got dominant position, and proceeded to engage in a one-sided beatdown. Now, the referee let the fight continue, did not stop it until the middle of round 2, where eventually Valentina Shevchenko locked up a rear naked choke and got a submission. Prior to that submission, however, Cachoeira was stuck on the bottom in a crucifix position, just being hammered repeatedly over and over and over and over and over and over again. That should have been called a TKO, technical knockout. That is when a fighter can no longer intelligently defend themselves, and so the referee steps in. That is the most common way that mixed martial arts events stop. Not submission, not knockout, but technical knockout. Again, when one fighter can no longer intelligently defend themselves, and so the referee steps in and stops the action. So, if I were reffing that match, I may have stopped it in the first round, but I definitely would have stopped it in the second round once Shevchenko locked up that crucifix position and landed a number of undefended strikes. Now, I cannot help but think that this fight would not have received the same sort of criticism if it was 2 men fighting. And I'll tell you why. Men in particular, we have an instinct to protect women. When we see women in danger, women suffering, we think of our mothers, we think of our sisters, we think of our daughters, and that protective instinct comes in, and we think, oh, it tugs at our heartstrings. Regardless of your socio-political alignment, your views of gender equality, whatever, it tugs at the heartstrings. Men don't like to see women suffer. So, I've seen fights like this with men that were one-sided, where the referee should have stepped in sooner, but they didn't get the type of press this did. Dana White did not step in and say, "This man should never step foot in the octagon again and referee." But that was the case this time. A couple of months ago, I worked for the Heroin Fighting Championships in Beijing, China. It was the first all-female professional MMA event in the People's Republic of China. And the first match that I refereed for was kind of weird. Here's what happened. The 2 fighters squared up. It was a 100% stand-up fight. They never went to the ground. They squared up. One of them landed a punch right on the nose. Her nose started to bleed. Nothing too bad. She could breathe. So I let it continue. Right, a bloody nose is no reason to stop a fight. It's not a TKO. Unless it is bleeding excessively and the fighter cannot breathe, then you would call a doctor in to take a look at it. And you definitely don't want a fighter aspirating blood, breathing in blood into their lungs. But that wasn't the case. It was a nosebleed. She was fighting through it. She was intelligently defending herself, so I let it continue. Now, there was a vinyl mat, not a canvas mat. Canvas mats will absorb blood, and so you can get quite a bit of blood on a canvas mat, and you're not going to slip on it. But a vinyl mat, that's a problem. So, when I noticed the blood was pooling up on the canvas mat and the fighters were in danger of slipping on it, I called a timeout, brought in the ring doctor. He took a look at the nose, stopped the bleeding, okayed her for the second round. But the fighter did not answer the bell because she was worried about her nose. So that was the end of it. However, afterward, the officials who were putting on this program, the Heroin Fighting Championships, approached me and told me I had done a poor job reffing that match. I asked them why. What was the problem specifically? And they said, well, you should have stopped it sooner. I asked them why. She was intelligently defending herself. It was a nosebleed, not a life-threatening injury. Why? They wouldn't tell me why, but I knew the answer. The answer was because they are two women fighting and we feel sorry for them because there is blood. And we don't like to see that. It makes us feel bad. How many MMA fights have you seen where two men were bloody all over and it kept going and going and going? Lots of them. Because people like to see that. There's this understanding men are tough. Men can take punches. Men can bleed. But again, we don't like to see that from women as a culture, as a society. And more so in the People's Republic of China. Now, the next match that I reffed was also kind of weird for a couple of reasons. One, there was a wardrobe malfunction. There was this Russian girl fighting and her top came off. Now, I called a timeout, asked her to put her top back on, but suddenly a bunch of people ran into the cage, which they should not have done, and covered the fighter with towels and broke the position they were in, and I had to chase them out of there. I mean, all she had to do was pull her bra top down. Had to reset the fighters and all this stuff. Anyway, people get very sensitive about women fighting. Partial nudity, man. People just can't bear to see bare breasts. Anyway, but that wasn't the controversial part. So the fighters continued fighting. The Chinese girl got top position, passed the Russian girl's guard, took full mount, and landed 6 undefended strikes, boom, 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 right on the chin. And so I jumped in between them, waved it off, said, "Stop the fight, it's all over." And that was it. Or so I thought. But then some of the officials came to me afterward and jumped down my throat again. What did you do that for? You stopped it too soon." You just can't win in that type of situation. Reffing women's MMA it's way different than reffing men's MMA, not because the rules are different, but because the societal expectations are different. They really are. I mean, you might think they're not, there's equality and whatnot, but is there? You have to tread this thin line between allowing the women to do everything the men would do in the cage and yet not. It's kind of a lose-lose scenario in a lot of situations where otherwise, if two men were fighting, they would let it slide. Now, I'm not saying that was the case with Valentina Shevchenko. That fight should have been stopped. I mean, that was quite literally hundreds of undefended strikes. So, anyway, let me know what you think about that in the comments. Have you noticed a difference between the way women's MMA fights are officiated versus the way men's MMA fights are officiated? If so, how? What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching. Now get out there and train.